AI is the best thing that has ever happened to media. I'll get into why that is not the case in just a minute. But first, welcome to Plot Twists and Hat Tricks. I'm Amanda. Hockey analysis, book obsession. You miss 100% of the pages you don't read. This is the 7th episode. Can you believe it? Here at Plot Twists and Hat Tricks, the episodes are broken down into 3 segments or periods. The first period is always hockey analysis. Could be about the NHL, could be about the PWHL. You'll just have to tune in to find out. The second period is where I talk about a book. There are never any spoilers for the book being talked about, like ever. And let me tell you, this week was especially hard. Finally, we have the third period, which, similar to the game of hockey, anything can happen. So I consider it my wild card, and it changes every week. Well, let's lace up those skates and take the ice. The first period is about to start. So, as I alluded to last week, over the next month leading up to preseason starting, we are going to talk about each division in the NHL. But before we start talking about each division, I would like to talk about some breaking news that came across the airwaves this week in the NHL. First things first, Patrick Kane is going back to the Blackhawks. Am I about to eat my words on Bedard? I really hope so, because I am ready for it. So, what are my thoughts on this? So, I'm excited. I'm excited for the Blackhawks and the organization to have Patrick Kane back. I think that he is a great veteran player, and I think he's going to add some veteran energy that is much needed on the young team right now. And I think that he is going to really help Bedard grow as a player. We are not shocked at all that I'm not the biggest fan of Connor Bedard, but I'm really, really hoping with Patty Kane's mentorship that he just grows as a player and just explodes. And like I said, I'm so ready to eat my words. And I'm excited for the Blackhawks' future. I will definitely be tuning into some more games this year. The next news came in this morning. I am, per usual, recording this the night before because apparently I have terrible time management skills. And it is on Celebrini signing a 5-year, 18.8 average annual value, which is a new league high. Is he worth it? What are my thoughts on this? Well, I definitely think he's worth it. I think that he has just excelled beyond expectations for the Sharks and really put the team on the map again. I really, really thought they were going to make playoffs this season. And by this season, I'm meaning the 2026 playoffs. They are going to be a contender for years now. I am going to be absolutely shocked if they do not make it to the playoffs in 2027. But I think he is definitely worth it. I think that he's proven his worth. He is hilarious if you've ever seen social media videos. And he is just a great playmaker, too. I definitely see like a young Crosby in the making, maybe. But we shall see. Don't want to put any pressure on him. He is his own player. Hell, he's not the next Sidney Crosby. He's the next Celebrini. So, all of that, very exciting for him. And I'm excited to see what him and the Sharks do this season. All right, as expected, that was intense. So let's chill out a little bit and take a stop at the beach, preferably the one in Florida, and chat about the Atlantic Division. I do not want to be on the north side of the Atlantic. The water is cold, and no, I just don't. All right, so let's start off with the Buffalo Sabres. So before we get started, how this is going to work is I am going to say a team name, and then I am going to bring in a fun fact or facts, and then I'm going to bring on some notable players for that team that if you're not a fan of the team, you might want to keep an eye on. I'm not going to lie, the Atlantic Division is probably one of the divisions I watch the least, with the exception of one team, and I'll chat about that once we get there. But I definitely will need to be one of those people that watches some more Atlantic Division games, and not just when they play the Avalanche. And so maybe I'll take my own advice and watch these notable players. All right, so let's get started with the Buffalo Sabres. So this season, they made it to the second round in playoffs for the first time in over a decade, which is so fun to see. It was really, really great to see that. And the fandom deserved it. They have been through some rough times. I mean, look at Buffalo Bills, which is their NFL team. That enough said there with, we're just going to leave that alone. This is a hockey and book podcast, not a football podcast, and we're not going to make it one. But it was great for the fans. It was so much fun to see the league just rally around this team, and just to see the fans. And anytime they shot the fans were just going insane. And they're definitely going to be I expect them to be a contender again for several years to come. I am interested in how the Bowen Byram trade affects them. That was probably one of their the more notable trades this season, or this off season rather. So I will definitely be keeping an eye out on that. So speaking of players, let's talk about a couple notable players. And I'm going to just start with, I am very, very bad at pronunciating, and just looking ahead at my list, I'm nervous. There's at least one name that I am going to butcher, and I am so, so sorry. I know that when I was working on the outline earlier this week, and I was looking at some of these names I was going to have to say, and I was like, do I just take that name off, even though he is a notable player, because I can't say his name? And I was like, nah, we're going to just do it for the pod and just butcher the name, and then people can make fun of me on social media, and I'm here for it. No such thing as a bad view, right? Anyway, back to the Sabres. So some of our notable players are Tage Thompson. You probably would recognize the name if you watched Four Nations, if you watched the Olympics. He's super tall, so that's a fun fact. Jason Zucker, Rasmus Dahlin, Owen Power, and the name that I am going to butcher so bad. He is their starting goalie, Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen. I'm so sorry if I pronounced that wrong. I'm so sorry. And Alex Lyon. So the reason why Alex Lyon made the list is because he came in relief in a couple games, and he helped the Sabres make it to the second round, if I am recalling correctly. I could be getting my rounds mixed up. I watch too much hockey, which is not a bad thing. But because I watch too much hockey, sometimes I get some timelines mixed up, so I apologize. Also, if you happen to be Buffalo Sabres fan, if I missed any players, please send them my way. The Sabres are not a team that I watch very often, so that's going to change this season with this podcast. But yeah, send them my way if I missed any. All right, next team I have on the docket is the Tampa Bay Lightning. So Remember how I said I don't know a lot about the Atlantic Division? Well, it showed again when I was doing this outline because I had to do some research on some facts for several teams. The Tampa Bay Lightning was one of those teams. So, the interesting fact that I have about the Tampa Bay Lightning is that they have tied the Colorado Avalanche for the longest playoff streak with 9 appearances. And this is consecutive appearances. So, great for them. And let's see if they'll make it 10 and just keep tying the Avs. All right. Some notable players are Nikita Kucherov. He is constantly in the top player of the league conversation with Connor McDavid and Nathan MacKinnon. I expect Celebrity actually will be in that conversation soon. Next, I have Jake Guentzel. So Jake Guentzel holds a special place in my heart because he used to be a Pittsburgh Penguin, and I really thought he was going to be Crosby's protege, and I think he is to an extent, and he has excelled in his career. He spent some time on Carolina, and now him being on Tampa, he could really be his own player, and he can be a leader in his own right. So, really excited to see him. You would think that since he was one of my favorite players, that I would watch Tampa Bay more, but alas, here we are. And actually, my 9 to 5 job, it has a lot of Tampa Bay fans, so you would think that I would watch them more. Like I said, we do the things. Next, we have Brandon Hagel, then Brandon Point, and then we have John Carlson, who was actually acquired during the offseason, but I think he's going to make an impact on the Lightning this season. He's an older player, but I think he's going to add some veteran depth, and I think he is somebody that the Lightning can really build a base off of, and they can continue their playoff streak. Next on the list is Victor Hedman, which he's pretty consistently in the conversation with Cale Makar and Quinn Hughes. Tampa has some stellar players from an individual standpoint, and I mean, how they almost three-peated, one of the first teams in a long, long time to three-peat, but they won back-to-back Stanley Cups in the bubble year, and then the season after that, they made the Stanley Cup for trying to three-peat against the Colorado Avalanche in 2022, but they were denied, and my boys beat them on home ice. But we're going to save that story for a different day. Next, we have Ryan McDonough. And then the player that honestly I am shocked that I have not gotten DMs about is probably because this is still a new podcast and not too many people are listening yet. So the last player is Andrei Vasilevskiy. He has done a lot for the Lightning. He is the reason they've made the playoffs all 9 years. He is the reason why the Lightning made the finals 3 years in a row. He is the reason for Tampa's success, especially in the playoffs. I think he is fighting through some injuries, and I do think they depend on him a little too much. I do stand by my earlier mentions from, I believe it was episode 1, that he's a bit overrated and that the league gives him a lot of respect, and he won the Vezina because of his history, not necessarily the season's performance. So I stand by that, but I had to, of course, add him on the list. All right, we are going to head up north to Quebec and check in on the Montreal Canadiens. So I would say that the Montreal Canadiens are probably the team that I watch the absolute least, I have some beef with the Canadians, probably more French Canadians, because I've not had great experiences with French Canadians. And so we're just going to leave it at that. But because of this podcast, I'm definitely going to be watching them more. So I expect that I'm soon to become a fan of the Canadians. I mean, I already like Cole Caulfield and Nick Suzuki. So anyway, back to their fun fact. So they won their first playoff series in 5 years. So pretty much since their last major playoff run, which was in the early 2020s, with defeating Tampa Bay. Womp womp. Sorry, Tampa. Some notable players, as I mentioned, are Cole Caulfield, Nick Suzuki, Kirby Dach. And you see, guys, this is the place that I self-sabotage myself, because I chose what I'm assuming are two brothers. Again, I should have done my research. This is me not doing my research properly. And there's letters that shouldn't be next to each other. And I mean, they should be next to each other because they're a name, but they're not letters I know how to pronounce together. So we're going to try our best. And all the apologies to these players if and when I butcher your name. So first name is Florian X Hoppicut X Haka J, and then Arbor X Haka J. I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. That probably was not at all pleasing to the ears to hear. I'm so sorry. All right, jumping in with the Boston Bruins. Again, not a team I watch that much, and a team that I needed to research for a fact. And their fun fact is that they still do not have a captain after the shocking departure of Brad Marchand last season. Yeah, the alternate captains have definitely stepped up and taken that role, and I'm going to be shocked if Pastrnak or McAvoy are not named a captain this season or the absolute latest next season. So, I mean, I just named two notable players. So let's go through the list of other notable players. So we have Jeremy Swayman. The talent this goalie has is insane. The original goalie tandem of Jeremy Swayman and Linus Ullmark was probably one of the best goalie tandems that I have seen in modern day hockey. Just like how they play together is just fantastic. And the goalie hugs at the end of the game, come on, that is just social media gold. And I'm not gonna lie, I have definitely tuned in to a game that I saw the Bruins were winning and watched the last 3 minutes of the game so that I could be there when they did the celebration and hope and pray that whatever broadcast I was watching did show the goalie hug at the end. Well, to follow that up is Morgan Geekie. Our next team is the Ottawa Senators. Again, not a team that I've watched very often, but obviously this is going to change during this upcoming season. And I'm definitely going to be keeping a closer eye on them because of that huge trade of Brady Tkachuk going to Florida. And I'm really, really interested to see how the Senators play after that. And you better believe that I am going to be sitting as close as I can to my TV when Ottawa plays Florida. So their fun fact is they went from the worst team in the division in January before the Olympic break, which, if you didn't know, typically during either the Olympic break or the All-Star break, if you are not a bubble team, like you are sitting outside of, or you're not a bubble team, meaning that you're not maybe 1 to 3 points out. 3 points is pretty over generous. So let's say like 1 to 2 points out of a playoff spot. The chances of you making the playoffs super, super slim. But, they defied the odds, and they actually ended up clinching a playoff spot in April, which is just spectacular work. Like, snaps to them. Congratulations. So their notable players obviously do not include Brady Tkachuk, and that would be Nick Cousins, Claude Giroux, who I was really thinking was going to go back to the Flyers, but he's staying with the Senators. I expect him to be retiring after the season, or maybe he'll just continue to sign one-year contracts, and then I'm going to say that every single year, and he is going to just be a Senator or go back to the Flyers and play for another 20 years. Who's to say? Thomas Chabot, and then the second half of arguably one of the best goalie tandems, Linus Ullmark. Yeah, I still miss those goalie hugs. I can picture it in my head right now, and they were just fantastic. Moving on. All right, so it's probably going to look really weird because I'm going to cut me getting up to let my annoying cat, but very cute cat, Indorna, in, because I unintentionally locked her out of the recording room. So you might have just seen me not have a cat, and then suddenly I have a cat. So if you're watching on video, this cat is Andorna. She did make an appearance last episode. She is a very needy cat. She is considered a Velcro cat, and she's my little co-host. So she may or may not hang out with us as we talk about the Red Wings, but we shall see. All right, so luckily you guys didn't hear all the stuff prior, so let's get started with the Detroit Red Wings and see how long Indorna joins us. All right, so if you've been a hockey fan for a long period of time, and I'm thinking like, excuse you, early 2000s, late 90s, then you are aware of the intense rivalry between the Detroit Red Wings and the Colorado Avalanche. For reference, I was raised to hate Detroit Red Wings fans. I was raised that the Red Wings suck, and I think I even had a shirt that said Red Wings suck that my dad got for me, and my mom was so mad. Great times. And I was even told by my dad that if I ever brought a Red Wings fan home as a boyfriend, that I would be disowned. And all jokes aside, the Red Wings have their history, especially with Avs. Goodbye, Indarna. And especially with Avs fans. So it is quite shocking for their fact to have had a decades-long streak that ended when I was an undergrad. So I'm thinking it was around 2016, 2017 area. And I don't recall them making it since. So they've been in quite a long drought. They have been a bubble team for multiple seasons, but they keep falling short. So the Red Wings are an interesting team, and they are not a team that I watch very often, but they are a team that I keep my eye on, and a team that I know the news for. some of this is because of the intense rivalry between the Avalanche and the Red Wings. And some of it is just they got a lot going on and it's just interesting to pay attention to. So where I wouldn't say they have as intense of a rivalry now with the Colorado Avalanche, those games still sell out. When we talk about the Central Division in a couple weeks, then we'll talk about some new rivals for the Avs. As mentioned in previous episodes, they've also cleaned up in their hockey operations department, and I think that the Red Wings are making a shift. And I think this might be the shift that they need to make the playoffs in the 2027. And I think it's also a response, honestly, to the Dylan Larkin drama. And I stand by with, I hope he does not have a C on his chest when he plays his first game in October, because I think, and I've seen a lot of Red Wings fans agree, that it's so disrespectful to request a trade from a team and have that publicized. So whether that was intentional or not, I'm going to assume that it was not intentional, because I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. But regardless, that would be tough, and I don't know if he can hold a leadership position after that. So with that being said, let's talk about a couple notable players. So the first one that I have on my list is JT Compher. JT Compher. He used to play for the Colorado Avalanche, and he actually won the cup with them in 2022. So he holds a special place in my heart. And when I worked with the Avalanche, he was also such a fantastic player to work with. And, well, let's just say I was absolutely devastated when he left the Avalanche to go to the Red Wings. I was like, dude, you had the entire league and you had to choose the Red Wings. And then I took a step back and was like, well, I guess it's not Dallas, and I guess it's not Minnesota, and I guess it's not Philly, and I guess it's not Montreal, but still Detroit? Like, come on, dude. So he'll always hold a special place in my heart. He's really, really fun to watch. And which leads to our next player, Alex DeBrincat. And finally, Justin Falk. So I ended with Justin Falk on the Red Wings because this guy is quite the veteran. I've seen him popping up on so many different teams, and he has such that veteran presence. I would love to see him in a leadership role if he's not there already. Tell me that I am not a Red Wings fan without telling me. I don't even know who their leadership is. But I would like to see him as a leadership role. I think that as a vet, he is getting older, so maybe not the captaincy, but some sort of leadership role. I think he'd be a good player for that. And I remember him playing on Carolina, and he's fun to watch. All right, so we have the Florida Panthers is the next team. So I have several facts for them. So this is the team that I watch probably the most in the Atlantic Division, and one of my facts is the reason why, and I'll tell you here shortly. So first fact is they won the Stanley Cup in back-to-back seasons, 2024 and 2025. So the other team to do this was their brother team in Tampa Bay. As I mentioned, they did this in, I believe, 2020 and 2021. And it is really funny to think, like, when you think Florida, you do not think hockey at all. And they, in the past, 10 years, they have 4 cups? Okay, cool, awesome. They made the Stanley Cup Finals 3 seasons in a row. Obviously, the 2 seasons that they won the Stanley Cup and then also the season prior in 2023. So I want to take a step back and talk about the 2023 season. So the 2023 season was a crazy season for the Panthers. That was the year that Matthew Tkachuk came over from the Calgary Flames and just completely changed the team's identity and gave them a new reputation. In fact, gave them the reputation of being a cheap team, which is actually the reason why I like watching them, because I love to watch Matthew Tkachuk. And I hate playing against him, but I love to watch him. And I'm fine with him being in the Eastern Conference now, so I don't have to see him so much as an Avs fan. He is a pain in the booty. But he's one of the reasons I think that they made, in fact, I know is why they made the Stanley Cup Finals for 3 seasons in a row, and why they didn't make the playoffs for a 4th season. He's had some very, very tough injuries. In the 2023 playoffs, it was released that he broke his sternum in, I believe, the Eastern Conference Finals. And so that's, if you're not a big hockey fan, that is the round prior to the Stanley Cup Finals. And if you don't know, your sternum is your chest bone. That is a very, very hard bone to break. And it is extremely painful. And he continued to play. Like, this guy, he's insane. I mean, I'm not, am I old enough? I was very, very young when his dad, Keith Tkachuk, played in the league. So I don't really remember him playing, but I've been told that he plays very similar to his dad. So some notable players for the Florida Panthers. There's a lot, and this is how you can tell that I watch a lot of games for this team, because I was like, oh, I have to include that guy, and I have to include that guy, and that guy, and that guy. Okay, so sorry in advance if you hate the Florida Panthers and you hate every single name. You might just want to skip ahead like 10 seconds, maybe a little bit more. Make that 30. All right, so we have Matthew Tkachuk and Brady Tkachuk. So excited for the Bash Brothers experience this upcoming season. I'm going to be tuning into so many games. It's going to be great. Alexander Barkov and Sam Bennett. These 2 players feel like they are and Sam Reinhart. These 3 players, I think, are core to the Florida Panthers. I think when they're not playing, that the Panthers really struggle. At least if one of them is not playing, you see a decline. I mean, do players like Matthew Tkachuk make up for it? Yes, but I think they just hold such a core for the team that it's just unmatched when they are not on the ice. Next player is Brad Marchand. So I have a quick little story about Brad Marchand. I hated Brad Marchand before he joined the Panthers. And now that he's on a team that I actually enjoy watching, because I can't be a Boston fan, I'm sorry. I like him more. I still think he's a rat. He had this weird little trend going in, I think it was 2020, where he was licking other players. And Brad, come on, we're adults here. Like, let's not do that. Let's not lick other people. Let's not lick other people's sweat. That's gross. Don't do that. Bad. All right. Next player is Carter Verhaeghe. I would say that I added him on this list because I really like saying his last name. He's also a great player, but I really like saying his name. And then Seth Jones. He has really come out of his shell. I was shocked that he left the Blackhawks and that he came over, but he's just been such an integral part of their defense. He's fun to watch. Next, we have Radko Gudas. I am so sorry, again, if I mispronounce that name. He is coming back to the Panthers, and it is going to be fun to see what this team goes up. And then the reason for some of the biggest news to happen in free agency is Jacob Markstrom coming back to the Florida Panthers from New Jersey. It's going to be a fun season, guys. It's going to be a really fun season. All right, let's start our final team of the Atlantic Division, which is the Toronto Maple Leafs. Okay, so I have a lot of thoughts about Toronto, and I think that Toronto is probably one of the most talked about teams in the league because they're in the heart of hockey town. Hockey Hall of Fame is in Toronto. And the media presence in Toronto is just unmatched. The pressure that Toronto has to perform, unmatched. And there are a lot of interesting facts that I have about Toronto for this season. So they did not make the playoffs in 2026. And they're actually known for being first round exits. It's kind of a joke around the league. But for them to not even make playoffs this season was absolutely insane. And I think this resulted in a front office overhaul. And to be honest, I'm concerned about the team's future after this. I don't think that this is a front office problem. I don't think this is necessarily a coaching problem. I think there is a team chemistry problem and something core wrong with the team. And what that is, I don't know. But I don't know what happens behind closed doors. I can only attest to what I see on the ice. But this does not feel like it is a front office or coaching staff issue. And also, another reason why I think this is a team issue is because look what happened with Mitch Marner when he left. He almost won a cup on his first year away from this team, in his first year of Vegas. That is crazy. Granted, same thing happened with Jack Eichel. He thought that he peaked, or plateaued a little bit, I should say, with Buffalo before he came over to Vegas. And same thing happened. First year he was with Vegas, they made the Stanley Cup Finals. He actually won the cup. And then you have Marner making it to the Stanley Cup Finals, which is farther than he ever made it with Toronto. So I think that says something about what's going on in the team, and I think they need to reflect on the team. But they made some huge signings during the offseason, so who's to say? All right, so some notable players. Max Domi. I really like watching Max Domi's play. He is kind of a brutish player, but he also has some skill with him. Next, we have Austin Matthews. I think that he represents Arizona fantastic. And being the captain of the Toronto Maple Leafs, is he part of the team problem? Maybe. Again, I am not in the locker room. Next, we have William Nylander and Colton Sissons, who was actually acquired during the offseason. We have John Tavares, which several seasons ago now, I want to say I was still in college. Maybe I was getting my master's. I don't know what I was doing. I just remember school. And he went from the New York Islanders to Toronto, and that was just insane. That was huge news during free agency. And that was one of Kyle Dubas's biggest signings. So he was also the captain for several seasons. He has since been stripped of the C, and it was given to Austin Matthews. So maybe that's a problem. I think this problem with Toronto has been going on for a long time. So it's something I'm going to keep an eye on for sure. Next, we have Oliver Ekman-Larsson, Morgan Riley, I love Morgan Riley. He is a fantastic defenseman, and I don't think he's talked about enough. He's a great stay-at-home defenseman, and I think because of where the league is going, we don't have a lot of stay-at-home defensemen. We have a lot of defense that are very offensive. Look at Quinn Hughes and Cale Makar, for example. And I think that's the new age of defense coming up, is being a more offensive defenseman. But I think there's definitely a place for a defensive defenseman, and Morgan Riley is a shining example of that. And then finally, Sergei Bobrovsky. This was the huge signing during free agency frenzy. I've talked about it so much, you're probably tired of hearing me talk about it. So we're just going to leave it at that. I'm really excited to see what the Leafs have to perform this year. Wow, that was a really long segment. Let me tell you, I just glanced up at the recording time and I was like, cool, this is going to be a real long episode. This is going to be fun to edit. Anyway, so per usual, the first period was nonstop, and today was no exception. So with that being said, let's keep this party going and chat about this book that has literally had me reeling still a week after finishing it, and celebrate the re-release of Daggermouth by HM Wolfe. All right, so what is this book about? Again, to avoid spoilers, because we don't have spoilers in this section, is a very simple sentence. An assassin falls for her mark. I'm gonna let that sink in for a second. How did I consume this book? I read it on my Kindle, so I did an eyeball read. However, if you like audiobooks, I have heard the audiobook is fantastic. One critique that I have heard from it, which obviously I can't speak to, I have not done the audiobook, is it does change POVs pretty often. I noticed that when reading, and I was able to keep up with it because of context clues. But if you're listening to the first time on audio, it could get a little confusing. So if you're listening to this book on audio, I wouldn't be doing a task that you might just like zone out while listening. So maybe not listen to it while you're working or driving. Maybe listen to it when you're doing chores around the house or like washing dishes or something. So why should you read this book? Well, this book went from an indie publish to a trad published book. But why is this important? If you're not a reader, you're probably like, cool, so it got republished. You heard me say that in the face-off between first and second period. So what is that? What does that mean? So indie publishing occurs when an author is not signed with a publisher. This is very typical for new authors because it is really hard to get into the publishing space. And the significance of this is that the book is going to get into more people's hands. So with indie publishing, you're not typically going to be getting in those big stores like Books A Million, Barnes and Noble. You will get in to like the smaller bookshops, such as, I know like a lot of local bookshops to Colorado. You have probably a good shot there, but to try to hit all the independent bookshops around the entire country, that's hard. So it gives the book more of a diverse audience. And so moving from an indie publish to a trad publish, sometimes there are things that are changed from the indie publishing to trad publishing, usually not too noticeable, but it's a huge deal for authors. The publishing company also will take on a lot of some of the challenging work, such as getting their book into those big bookstores. They help with social media, they help with cover designs, they help a lot. So it's a huge deal to go from indie to trad publishing. Another reason why you should read this book is it is not your typical enemies to lovers. It is a true enemies to lovers where there's a lot of banter. It's not a bully romance like we're seeing in Zodiac Academy or even Forbidden Love like we see in popular romanticides such as the ACOTAR series or the Empyrean series. And let me tell you that twist at the end of the book. When I talk about my thoughts, I will talk more about this, but if anything, trust me, read this book for that twist at the end because it's going to have your mind just spinning and spinning and spinning and spinning. I am in essentially like a book Discord, and we still are talking about the ending. It was selected as our book club this month, and I am so excited for it to be talked about in book club and just to hear the reactions, and I'm just so excited. All right, so what are my thoughts of the book, in case you didn't get them? First off, I finished this book last Tuesday, and I'm still thinking about the ending. And that is not very common for me, I'm not going to lie. There are not a lot of books that I finish and I just stare at the wall and just don't know how to process. I didn't even know what book I wanted to read next. Like, there was no more reading done that night after I finished it. And I'm still thinking about that ending, and there's just so many possibilities, and it was so beautifully written. And if that's not a good enough endorsement for it, I don't know what is. It actually helped me create a spin-off Instagram account of my cat Indarna, who you saw earlier. She helped me actually choose my next book. I wrote a bunch of book titles on a bunch of different sticky notes, and I threw them in the air, and she selected what my next read was. My next thought is on the recent AI article from the Atlantic. So I'm not going to dive too deep into this, and I'm saving my rant because that is the topic for the third period is AI. And so I don't want to spend too much time on it, but this book is making headlines because of that article. And we're not going to get fired up right now, Amanda. But yeah, we're just going to keep it at that. Next, I have just the enemies to lovers experience that I had. Enemies to lovers is probably one of my favorite tropes. I don't know what it is about it, but this was not like any other enemies to lovers that I've read before. And I mean, the plot of the assassin falling for her mark, like, there's a reason why he is her mark. And I also just love that the assassin was female. Some girl power there, love it. And like I said, just unmatched. It was also the perfect balance of some really, really dark themes. So please, please, please read the trigger warnings before you read the book. And if it's something you can't handle, your mental health means more than reading this book, please send me a DM, and I am happy to talk to you about where those triggers pop up, how significant they are, if they're happening on page or off the page, if there's mentions, where they're mentioned, and if you can skip over that. But those dark themes aren't even forced. They feel natural in the story. And I did like that. I was concerned about the triggers, I'm not gonna lie. But it was so good. I thought that the trigger that I was concerned about, it popped up in the best way, and I think it made the character really, really strong. And it's also a dystopian. And let me tell you, dystopian books are making a comeback. I mean, we see this with all the prequels of Hunger Games that is coming out right now. But I've seen it with Stormbreaker, which is another book I read for book club, also a dystopian, and they're making a comeback. So get ahead of the train, guys. See, I told you, books can be as intense as hockey. Well, this is the part where we normally take a chill pill and have some fun. But we just can't have that now because, as I alluded to earlier, we have a serious topic to talk about. Don't worry, I'm going to chat about both sides and the pros and cons, but I am not going to dive deep into this topic. I'm going to keep it fairly surface level and keep it focused on the effect that it's starting to have in both the hockey and book community. Okay, friends, let's talk about AI. So, for those of you who don't know, which, if you don't know what AI is, you don't work in tech, and I don't even know if you work in the corporate world, to be honest. AI is artificial intelligence, and we are seeing it pop up all over in media. And so this third period segment is going to be about how it works in sports and how it's working in the arts right now. So I'm going to start with my rant about AI. So on the eve of HM Wolfe's trad published re-release of Daggermouth, there was an article released by the Atlantic accusing her of using AI to write this book. Oh, okay. So, what is the harm in this? There have been multiple authors that have come out against AI and the use of AI. There have been multiple authors accused of AI, using AI in their books, and it has destroyed their careers. If we're looking at it from an image standpoint, then, I mean, we're seeing these pop up on social media. We're seeing, okay, I'm going to go back to the social media one. Let's focus on HM Wolfe. So, I'm scared for her on this one because she didn't write this book in AI. There are some keys that you can tell when things are written in AI. And yes, you can tell the chatbot, don't make it sound like I wrote this with AI. I get that. But I need to go back and reference the twist that happened at the end. I'm sorry, AI cannot reproduce that. No way. And it's like the writer of the article didn't even read the book. Like, I'm sorry, some of the themes in that book, AI, as advanced as it is not going to come up with that, even if you feed it the right prompts. Like, I work in IT. That is my 9-to-5 job. So I use AI in a lot of different scenarios. I would not say I am a huge supporter of AI, but I have accepted that it is becoming an everyday part of my life. I understand that it makes tasks faster and even makes tasks a little bit easier. It's a great tool for learning and studying if fed the correct information and if you're using the prompts correctly. I'm sorry that I don't know how this staff writer could accuse her of using AI in this book. I just can't. just blown away. He even used an AI tool, which he noted has been unreliable, as evidence that she's using AI. I'm sorry. I'm sure that I've read a lot of books. I am on pace to read over 30 books this year, and I'm sure that I have seen the exact same sentence pop up on in another book. And if you're using the AI, her book to train the AI, of course it's going to say that. If you're using other published work to train the AI, then yeah, I'm sure the same strings of words have been put together, the same types of sentences. That does not mean that she used AI to create it. It just means that's how the story progressed. I would really challenge him to actually read the book, and I'm hoping that he takes this back, because it can be very damaging to a young author's career. And she's growing, and instead of celebrating the fact that she is a traditionally published author, she is having to strike down the questions of AI in her work. And that's just not right. And I think it was very, very bad journalism. And all right, we're gonna calm down a little bit. Yeah, that'll get you fired up. So a little bit more on the AI images in social media. We've all seen it. We've seen. I know that probably the most recent one that I've seen is some images generated by AI to illustrate a Dramini or a Draco Hermione fanfic, and that some of the tropes in that. And it's great for visual images, especially if you're trying to create it from actors. But the dangers with this is that you're starting to get something called deepfakes. And that, if you don't know what a deepfake is when you have a person of power that is saying things they never actually said, but it looks legit. And this is already happening. This happened with Taylor Swift, of some inappropriate images being made of her, and she went after them, thank God. And I mean, we are seeing this with political leaders as well. And if we're not careful, that's going to start a war. It can get really, really dangerous. So I think AI has gone too far. And it's not to say that there isn't a place for AI, because I think there is. I think that it is a great tool to help with research and studying, as I alluded to earlier. I use it in my day-to-day to help solve some problems, because it provides an insight that maybe I didn't think of because I'm too narrow focused. It's also, I've been chatting with my cybersecurity guy at work, and I was talking with him about the dangers of AI and how I don't really trust it. And he's like, no, your feelings are valid. Actually take a listen to this podcast that I found and see if this changes your viewpoint. And I do want to highlight one quote, so to speak, from this podcast, and I'm blanking on what it is. I will link it in the show notes, but essentially the host said that very, very similar fears occurred when like Google came and those search engines began, and because how people were doing research changed. It changed from looking it up in a book to now you can go type in your question to Google, and Google will give you 10,000 results on that. Or you say, hey, I want to see a picture of a cat, and it's going to send you 100,000. That's not even a number, but that many cat pictures. So the ball in research, it's changing, and it's going through some growing pains. The concern with AI that I have is that it's not being regulated, which is why these deep fake images are so dangerous. And it's why we have people falsely accused. We were chatting about this in my book Discord yesterday when we saw the article, and somebody compared it to a modern day witch hunt, and I 1,000% agree. It is unfortunate that HM Wolfe is a woman, and that's a woman of color, because that makes this sort of accusation that much worse. And then it's looking at, does this go just beyond attacking an author and her work, but does it bring race in? I'm not going to speak too much to that, because I don't know the staff writer. I don't know his views. I look for the best in people, and I assume that they have good intentions, and to think that race and or gender might have played a part in it irritates me even more. So we're just not even going to think about that. But we've been talking a lot about books and a lot about AI, or a lot about images and such. So how does this really affect sports? This can mess with predictions. And a good thing that could happen from AI is that if you are part of a fantasy football league, like I am, and you don't have a boyfriend who religiously watches every single NFL game to make your team for you and manage your team and put people on the bench or take them off the bench and pretty much manage your team, and you just come up with a team name, then AI might be great for helping you choose players for a fantasy team. It can also, I could see it being great for sports betting if that's something you're into. That opens a whole other can of worms, but I think that it could assist with that. I think it has the potential. And at the end of the day, that's not necessarily something that is harmful to overall society. Like, you putting in a bet that say that AI said Mac as in Nathan McKinnon was going to score a hat trick tonight against New Jersey. And you go ahead, you put that bet in, and Mac does not score a hat trick. Well, you're out however much you put in. So if you're a reasonable bettor and you put in like $10 to it, then you lost $10. It's not necessarily hurting anyone, unless you have a gambling problem, and that's a separate issue that we're not going to cover here. But from like the sports side, it's not necessarily hurting anyone right now. From a fan standpoint, it can be great little snapshot for analysis on a team. I could see that as being a problem of AI having its own opinion on something and potentially giving fake news or inaccurate news, and that would actually be a con of AI. So the analysis, from an analysis standpoint, if you're checking for, if it's not something that you could Google, so say like if we're using Nathan McKinnon for example, if you are like, if you ask AI, is Nathan McKinnon a nice guy? AI is going to just be pulling opinions that it finds from news sources, combining them and then coming up with a conclusion for you. And that's not fair to McKinnon. But if you're pulling up like, oh, hey, how many goals did McKinnon score in the 2022-2023 season? That is something that it knows a direct answer to. And that would be more of a reasonable use of AI. But once we're getting into attacking who a person is, then we're in trouble. And I think we are starting to lean that way. And that is really scary. AI can be a good assistant, but we shouldn't rely 100% on it. And that is coming from somebody who works in tech. And I work with AI. I was joking around with some coworkers today, and I included in my fake job title that I'm the Claude connector expert. And for those of you who don't know, Claude is an AI agent, and you can integrate Claude into multiple different applications, one of them being the Microsoft 365. And me, as well as a couple of my superiors, work together on a solution to solve this connector problem, and I'm just the one who implements it. So as an assistant, it's great, but it does have its limitations, and it can be harmful. And so if you learned anything from this mega long episode, please, please, please support HM Wolfe and read Daggermouth. It was not written by AI. And please, 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 if you are going to accuse somebody of AI or using AI in images or in some part of their art, if you're taking AI's word for it on somebody's personality, please check yourself and recognize where you're standing and where the information is coming from. Do your research on AI and use it appropriately. Please, please, please. And like I said, please go read Daggermouth by HM Wolfe. You are not going to regret it. Well, that's it, folks. Thank you so much for tuning into this week's episode of Plot Twist and Hat Tricks. Since we are a brand new rookie podcast, please rate 5 stars and leave a nice review, as it helps other hockey lovers and book enthusiasts find me. I am active on social media. You can find me on TikTok and Instagram at PTHTpod, or email me at pthtpodcast@gmail.com. I would love to hear your thoughts and ideas for future episodes. Until then, remember, you miss 100% of the pages you never read and the shots you never take. See you next week, guys.